Hey, Pioneers! Welcome to today's episode, throwback number 487. Today's episode is one that features RuthAnn Zimmerman, and we're talking about Mennonite traditions for simple meals and stronger families. If you've ever felt like there just aren't enough hours in the day to cook everything from scratch, this conversation is for you. RuthAnn is a homesteader who's been living this lifestyle for decades, raising her family on homegrown homemade meals while keeping her kitchen running smoothly. And not only did we share our best time-saving tips for cooking from scratch, but in a way that has helped RuthAnn feed her family well without spending every waking hour in the kitchen. Can I get an amen? We talk about planning ahead, stocking your pantry wisely, using freezer meals the right way, and how to stay encouraged when you're feeling stretched thin. And one of my favorite things about this episode was where we start talking about creating meals when you are cooking for a crowd. And as we come back into holiday season, of course, many of us are cooking for a larger amount of people as we have larger family gatherings. So not only does this serve us well during the holiday season, but it also serves us well as we move into summer. And especially if you have children who are getting married, or you're maybe helping with grandchildren's weddings, or maybe it's your own wedding. And I really loved that part of the conversation when we were talking about the wedding suppers and how you can use those in so many different ways. In fact, next year, my daughter will be graduating from high school, and we always do a really large gathering. And so you can use the tips for a number of things, but this one was just jam-packed. I know that this episode is going to serve you extremely well. But before we dive in, I want to give a huge big thank you to today's sponsor, which is Azure Standard. You all know, if you've been listening to the podcast for any amount of time, that I have been ordering from Azure Standard for years. They are my go-to for organic, bulk, natural groceries that support a from-scratch lifestyle. And whether I'm stocking up on grains for bread baking or household staples, I love that Azure lets me buy high quality food straight from family farms and small producers who share our values. I get all of my spices from Azure Standard. If you're looking to fill your pantry with wholesome ingredients and support sustainable small scale agriculture at the same time, check out azurestandard.com and use coupon code Melissa15. That's Melissa15 to get 15% off your first time customer order of $100 or more. You can shop online and pick up your order locally. It's like a community co-op made easy. Okay. I so enjoyed this interview with RuthAnn. I know you are going to enjoy it as well, and so many good takeaways. If you're not familiar with RuthAnn Zimmerman, RuthAnn and her family live in Northwest Iowa. She and her husband, Elvin, have been married for 25 years and have 7 children, 2 son-in-laws, and 1 grandson. And RuthAnn will be sharing a little bit about her story more right as we get into the beginning of this interview. And then just prepare your heart. There are such good tips and wisdom. I know you are really going to enjoy today's episode. RuthAnn, welcome to the Pioneering Today podcast.
Thank you, Melissa. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I am super excited. We were just chatting before we got on here, just so that y'all know. RuthAnn and I have habits of when you get outside and in the garden, one tends to lose track of time. And so we managed to meet today despite having some gardening delays, shall we say, where we were enjoying ourselves in the garden. So very excited to have you on here and chatting. So RuthAnn, for those who aren't familiar with you, I would love for you to tell us just a little bit about yourself, your family, your guys' homestead.
Okay. So my husband and I live in Northeast Iowa. We have 7 children. 5 of those children still live at home. Our 2 oldest daughters are married. We have a grandson, 2 son-in-laws, very busy place. So on our 21 acres, I'm not good with numbers, but we raise and grow almost all of our own food, right? So that keeps everybody busy. We didn't start out with the goal of raising all our own food. We just started out with creating chores for our children. And then we got addicted to the taste of homegrown food. And the more we learned about the food from the grocery store, the more we wanted to, raise all our own food. So now we've got, the boys, we've got the kids all doing chores. We're gardening, canning. And my husband and I both grew up old order Mennonite. So the farming and the homesteading way of life was not new to us. And I often tell people the reason it took a while for us to really embrace this lifestyle is we already knew exactly how much work it is, right? So we entered it cautiously and probably with a different mindset than most people, because Elvin, my husband, grew up on a dairy farm and I grew up on a hog farm. So he knows the commitment of a milk cow, right? So we're not jumping in, eyes closed, head first. We're thinking carefully because we already knew exactly how much work it is and how much commitment.
Yeah. So for those who might not be familiar, what exactly does old order Mennonite mean? Can you give some distinction between what maybe newer order or how you grew up in your old order Mennonite community? Can you give just a little bit further description on that?
Yeah. So old order Mennonites are very, very similar to Amish. There's a lot more people are familiar with Amish than old order Mennonites, and a lot of people probably thought we were Amish, but we were old order Mennonite. It's very similar. No cars, no radio, no TV, more or less self-sufficient. And then, so the only thing that all Mennonite churches have in common is that they are conscientious objectors or pacifists. They won't enlist in war, right? They won't. They won't go to war. So that's the only thing they all have in common. So there's Mennonites that are Mennonites, and you wouldn't even know by looking at them, right? Their church name might be Mennonite, but that's, from the outside looking in, we looked like Amish. Okay. So that was our first 27 years of our life was without a car, without radio, things like that.
Now, does old order Mennonite use electricity, or are they like Amish and no electricity, or is that where it's a little different?
There's a little difference there. We did have electricity and telephone.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I really wanted to chat with you today about cooking from scratch without spending a lot of time in the kitchen, and also cooking for large groups of people. And I know I grew up very not old order Mennonite. Actually, one of my great grandmothers was old order Mennonite, but I didn't have any of that by the time it passed down as far as, that part. But I grew up, my dad raised beef cattle, and we always had a big garden, and my mom canned and cooked a lot from scratch. And so a lot of that was really familiar to me. And there are still days where I have the space and I really enjoy it. When I have the space, I love getting to be in the kitchen and actually spending quite a bit of time, like making everything. And I really do enjoy that. But the reality is I definitely also have days I do not have the space or the time to cook like that, but I still want from scratch food, on the table and as the main part of our diet or the majority of our meals. And so that's what I wanted to chat with you today, because I feel like a lot of folks, especially if they're more on their beginner journey of cooking from scratch and making most of their meals at home, I think there's almost like a false, I don't even know if it's a romance, but like a false thought that you're only going to be spending hours in the kitchen, and that's like the only way to do that. And so I think it's just a really great conversation, and looking forward to chatting about it. So for you, like, what does cooking from scratch mean to you?
Well, cooking from scratch, okay, to give you a little context, I was 35 years old before I knew that you can buy prepared pie crust at the grocery store. Like, it blew my mind. I was like, what? What do you mean you don't know how to make pie crust?
Okay,
how do you
but
make pies?
Have you tasted the store-bought pie crust? Okay, because like this
my
is
grandmother would roll over in her grave.
Same. And so no shame, like if you didn't know and that was the only way you were taught how to do things, like, and I know that that's not either of our hearts, but
just for anybody who's listening, like if that's the only way you knew or you didn't know, like don't feel bad about that. We only know what we know, right? And we're all on a journey. But I grew up, like my mom always made pie crust from scratch. It's my great grandma's recipe. Like I just remember always watching. In fact, I do my pie crust, I crimp them the exact same way she does because that's what I watched modeling growing up. But I have tasted the store-bought, and this is a thing, like I almost feel like my kids they know how to do it because they were raised that way. But I'm almost like I've forced your taste buds because I have a really hard time. I don't think the store-bought stuff tastes good. Like I can't imagine that being like, if that's all you've known is pie crust. Oh, my friend, when you learn how to make it from scratch, you're gonna be like, this is what pie is supposed to taste like. You're gonna be in for like the best surprise. But like my kids, like I didn't have store-bought Oreos. Like I was a teenager because mom always made our cookies from scratch. And I remember friends were like so excited, like we're having Oreos tonight. I was staying a night at a friend's house and she was so excited. And so I was thinking these must be like this great thing. And I was like, I didn't want to hurt her feelings. So I didn't say anything, but I'm like, oh, I don't know why you're so excited. Like I don't think these are anything exceptional. So anyway, sorry, I got off on a little bit of a small tangent there, but I'm like, yes, the taste difference is just drastically different. So sorry, back to context and cooking from scratch.
So cooking from scratch to me is just cooking. Like there's convenience foods, but I never took the journey completely away from cooking from scratch. I always knew. So even in busy times when had a lot of babies, we were definitely buying more food from the grocery store, but it was always just seen as to get us through this week. So if we were buying, I don't even know, like maybe a box of cereal or something like that, it was just to get us through until I had time to make granola. But I think what a lot of people, going back to what you said earlier, a lot of people have this when they think cooking from scratch, they think Christmas time, and how hard they work to prepare. And they think that's every day, right? But it's not. Cooking from scratch is all about breaking it down into just ingredients, but those are convenience ingredients too, right? So you might can, meat, and you might can some green beans and some canned potatoes and some tomato juice. That is faster than anything else you're going to get at the grocery store. It's even faster than a boxed pizza, I promise you. Opening up, and I know a lot of people with smaller families, like they'll can their soups all together in one can, but it would take 4 quarts to feed my family. So I just, can them separately. And if you dump that all into a pot and heat it, you have nutrition and you have convenience. So cooking from scratch to me looks a lot like planning ahead, like planning months in advance or even weeks, and making sure you have all your convenience things on hand. And then let's say hash browns. If hash browns is something you're buying at the grocery store, canned potatoes are a perfect substitute for that. So instead of putting hash browns on your grocery list, because that makes a real quick, breakfast casserole, you just have canned potatoes. So it's all about the long game. Nobody's going to switch from, eating out of the grocery store to cooking from scratch in 1 week. It's a long, slow adjustment.
Yeah, I love that. It's definitely a journey. Oh, and one of the things that I always tell people is looking at the items that you eat on a really consistent basis that you are buying store-bought, like convenience prepared, and pick just 1 or 2 of those and learn how to make them at home, make it a part of your routine. And then when that's like, you know the recipe, you know how to make it, it's part of your routine, you're not really thinking about it anymore, then go ahead and add on the next one. Because I know so many folks, like you get, or at least for maybe this is my personality speaking, I'll get really excited about something. And I'm like, we're doing this, like, and I'm going all in. And then like 2 weeks down the road, I've like worn myself out and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then it just goes out the window.
Because you burned out. And I think that's a key thing to remember. Like even for myself, I'm trying to think of something that I'm trying not to buy at the grocery store. And one of the big things right now for me is mayonnaise, right? I didn't grow up with homemade mayonnaise, and I really love Hellmann's mayonnaise, right? So I know 2 things have to happen. Number one, my family's palate has to adjust. You got to give it time to adjust. And number two, I have to have time to work it into my routine. So let's say I want to make deviled eggs. And right now we're not eating a lot of sandwiches. We're really not using a lot of mayonnaise, right? So even if I do have some homemade mayonnaise in the fridge, it's probably no longer good because it's 3-month old, because that's how little mayonnaise we're using, right? So I have to work it into my little internal schedule that if I want to make deviled eggs, I have to allow time for me to whip up some mayonnaise. So I have to adjust to making it when I need it, and the family, I have to adjust to it not being at my fingertips, and the family's palates have to adjust. And the other thing is, I need to get to the point where I can make it without a lot of mental effort. Mm-hmm. When you're at the point of making something where you're like, okay, everybody's got to get out of the kitchen because I have to really think about this thing that I'm making. That's not a good time to judge if you're forever going to do this. Give yourself extra time, because all of the skills that you master are almost involuntary. You can keep visiting and you're still making your mayonnaise, and you just know you don't have to check the recipe and then see what you're doing. So I know there's multiple things that have to happen before I can really judge, is this, a skill that I'm going to keep, or is it just not working for our family?
Yeah. And I think that that's really smart. Actually, I want to key in on that for a minute, because as homesteaders and gardeners, a lot of our cooking, a lot of our lifestyle is very seasonality based, dictated by the seasons, like what food is in season. And in summer, we're eating so much fresh from the garden and it's delightful, but I'm also preserving a ton. It's almost like this double time. But there's the seasonality too of where we're at in our lives. And so I really like that you're saying, like, give yourself enough time to actually make a true educated decision on if this is the best thing for you to continue doing or not. So don't make that decision rashly, like right in the beginning, when of course it still feels hard, but also to have that frame of mind to look at what you're doing. And if it's not serving you and your family in that season, then it's okay, pick something else, right? And it's okay to take things away, like to think of things in seasons instead of so black and white and forevermore. Like, no, we only have this homemade, or we never, So I love that you kind of gave that framework for helping walk down that decision path for each person.
Another way, like talking about knowing when to just leave something and say, you know what, we can buy mayonnaise, it's not a big deal, is trying to decide how much is what I'm making with the mayonnaise. Do I truly count that as nutrition, or is it just a treat? And for me, mayonnaise, it goes into deviled eggs when we have sandwiches. So it really, to me, is up there with nutrition. So I would like to really make it, homemade. I want for us to learn to like it that way. My plan B, if we just can't learn to like it on sandwiches, we'll just use butter on sandwiches. We have lots and lots of butter, and we'll just get used to it that way. But now something like, let's say, sugar, right? I don't worry too much about where I'm getting my sugar or my powdered sugar, because almost every time I'm using it, it's just for a treat. It's not really counting as nutrition. It's in cakes or cookies or, things like that. So I don't worry too much about it. And it's the same right now for me with flour. And we're only using flour for treats. So I'm not really counting it. I'm not really stressing about it, where it goes, because I'm not feeding my family cookies as nutrition.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. I love thinking about it in very practical ways because so much, we read, there's so many things, like this could be true of anything in life, but like you can read all the things and be like, there is nothing that is not infiltrated with toxins or something that's harmful for me, or, this study shows X, Y, and Z. And I think we should be cognizant of those things. Like, I don't think we should bury our heads in the sand and ignore it. But I also think we have to have a measure of operability without just driving ourselves crazy and raising our stress index so high. I think that we have to find a bit of a middle ground. And of course, that's going to look different for every family, but giving yourself some different criterias to kind of help navigate that, I think is really, really wise and good tools. Well, I want to talk to you about meal planning and how you plan meals to save time during the week when it is, typically for most folks, or at least for my family, usually weekdays are a little bit busier than weekends. So it depends on what we've got going on as far as like planting weekends. This time of year when like the whole spring garden is going out, those weekends can be pretty busy, but usually I have a little bit more space on weekends.
So I am not a traditional meal planner. I don't plan my meals. I say that I have like a mental Rolodex of possible meals, and I know all the ingredients, but it's a lifestyle. I was raised this way. I've been cooking this way for a family for 20 plus years. And the other thing is I have my family's opinions. They'll say, well, we've had this 3 times. And I'm like, okay, I got to find a new section of my Rolodex and come up with new meals. But I do, because so the thing that happens when you just cook off the cuff like that is your children, when you want them to have the skills, they can't, because they can't see what's in here. They can't see what's coming up in your mind, or like, oh, we should have this, or we should have that. That's all just in here. So I have a 12-year-old son, and if I'm not careful, he's going to grow up and not have any cooking skills because he's always got his BB gun and is in the woods. So I do, when I'm teaching them to cook, I have a list of possible meals on the side of the refrigerator, and then they can choose from there. And it's meals that, that we can make with all the ingredients that we have on hand. So that is kind of the extent of my meal planning. Or like I'll go to the freezer and just browse around in the freezer until I'm inspired, or I'll go in the basement and look at all my canned goods, and be inspired that way. Like this morning, I went in the freezer and I was looking for ideas, and I saw some scalloped potatoes that I had put in the freezer that were left over. So I brought those in. So we'll have scalloped potatoes and poor man's steak or Salisbury steak, and I'll open a can of green beans. So that's kind of how I meal plan. Just every morning I look for new inspiration.
Yeah. It's funny. I used to joke and say, like, when I grow up, I want to be one of the meal planners that have like the written out calendar for a month in advance with everything. And apparently I just never grew up because that's not something that comes intuitive to me or natural to my personality. And it ended up stressing me out so much that then I was just like, this is just silly. Kind of that whole like knowing where you're at and deciding when something's not working to toss it out. So I do very similar, is looking like at what we have, and I like to know what that night's dinner is. And a lot of times I like to have at least a vague idea of what the next night dinner is going to be. But I kind of just really 1 to 2 days, sometimes 3 in advance is about as far as I go out. But I found that works really well, because that way, if I know tomorrow night, like we're going to do this, either it's using something I've cooked tonight and then I'm going to repurpose that into some type of leftover, that type of thing. Or if I'm like, no, tonight was leftover night, then I'm like, okay, I might need to thaw something in the fridge overnight to be able to cook it the night before. But I've found that it's just allowed me to actually cook our meals from scratch without the stress level. But I think the key to that is having a well-stocked pantry too. Because if you are constantly going and you're like, oh, you don't have the basics on hand, that's actually really difficult to do, because you're constantly running to the store for things. And then it's easy to buy the convenience items because you're already at the store and you're like, oh man, by the time I get home with this. And so I think being well aware of what your inventory is, and to your point, like going and looking and seeing like, what do I have and how can I pull these things together? But also work on building up a basic pantry so that you do have those key ingredients that you can pull them in to create a plethora of items.
I really, really, it's exactly my goal to teach people that want to cook from scratch. And I'm working on a cookbook with Harvest House.
I do know that.
Okay, so my goal for the cookbook is to have all of these basic recipes that you can then morph into anything. If you can make yogurt, then you can use yogurt in place of this, in place of that. It's not just for breakfast. You can use yogurt all these different ways and not have to buy cream cheese, not have to buy sour cream, and like a basic pudding. If you understand how to make a basic pudding, you can make French silk pie. You can make banana cream pie. You can make coconut cream pie. So that's my goal for my cookbook, is to teach you the basics. If you know how to make a good scalloped potatoes right off the top of your head, you can make like 5 different casseroles using that same base of scalloped potatoes. So I think what helps us it helps us intuitively cook from scratch is understanding the basics. Like, you don't need to buy cream of mushroom soup, right? No, you know how to make all your cream soups. So now anytime you have a recipe that calls for, a white sauce or a cream of mushroom soup, you can just make it. So now understanding the basics, and even like jams and jellies. I remember one spring, I was like, man, I have all these strawberries. I want to make strawberry jam, but I don't have any pectin. And I'm like, wait, hang on. Grandma didn't use pectin to make her strawberry jam. Like, if you understand the basic science behind your basic ingredients, you're set.
Yeah. And I have to say, it's actually so freeing. It's funny. My mom cooked a lot of things from scratch growing up, but when she made casseroles, she did use like the condensed canned cream of, like we're talking about, cream of chicken or mushroom or celery, like whatever. There's a lot of variations there. And so I remember when I was really on my health journey, and so I was cutting out a lot of the processed things, especially things that contained a lot of genetically modified ingredients. For me, that was one of the things that I was working on cutting out. And so a lot of your condensed cream soups do contain those types of oils or soy, those types of things. And so that was one where I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn how to make this at home and alter my recipes so that it's still my family favorites. Because to your point, if your family doesn't like it, at least in my experience, they don't really, I tend to be more of the health conscious one overall. Yeah. And so if they don't like it, they don't care it's healthier if they don't think it tastes as good. And then it's just this constant battle. So I was like, okay, I've got to figure out a way to still make our favorite recipes, but I need to make them in a way that I feel comfortable about the ingredients that are going into them. So it was the cream of soup, because I had a lot of recipes that was, kind of your base for and your sauces. And so I remember the first time that I made a basic roux with chicken stock to make just a basic cream of chicken soup. It literally takes like 4 minutes. It is extremely fast. And like, I already made and canned homemade chicken broth. So it was literally butter, chicken broth, a little bit of flour, fresh ground pepper. I didn't even need salt because I'd already salted my chicken broth, and then a little bit of cream at the end to give it the creamy part. Right. And I was like, this tastes like 10 times better. It was actually so cheap and it was so fast. I'm like, why did I think I needed a can? Like, this isn't even hard or laborious to make. It's actually incredibly quick. And
it's the same with, I get so excited when people understand a basic roux. Like, for my children, when I teach them to cook, that's one of the first things, because I was telling my daughter Hadassah the other day, she wanted to make chicken Alfredo. Ooh, she's like, I don't have cheese. We don't have Parmesan cheese. And I'm like, it's okay. We can make it without cheese. And she's like, you can? I'm like, oh yeah. You make a good roux, you can make a chicken Alfredo, like a mock chicken Alfredo. It doesn't even contain cheese because it just has all this cream and garlic and butter, and you can make it thick. And anyway, so the other thing that I get excited about when people understand is pasta. Like, for me, because I live, 10 miles out of town, if we decide we want pasta, it's faster for me to make pasta than it is for me to drive to town and buy pasta. And I would much rather stay at home anyway. So pasta I love when people master pasta.
Yeah. I think it's just one of those, it's almost like a rediscovering, right? Like, if you didn't know, if it wasn't something that you had watched someone make, or even sometimes as a child, I maybe watched my mom make something, but it didn't register with me, like how long it was taking her or that type of thing. And so then as an adult, but like, once you realize, so many of these things are actually incredibly simple to make and oftentimes easy. Simple doesn't always equate easy, but oftentimes I found, and I'm like, literally, I can make it faster. It's healthier for us. It's actually cheaper. There's true nutritional value to it. Then I can go to the store. Now, it's not true of everything time-wise, but more so than I think people would think.
I think you're right. And it's a rediscovering. The other thing that plays into how complicated something is, and I'm really exploring this myself, is less gadgets, right? So because oftentimes where I get hung up on is, okay, I want to make scalloped potatoes, but I don't feel like getting out my whatever. I used to have a big electric shredder. It went on top of my mixer and you push the potatoes in. So I would get hung up on gadgets because I don't want to get them out. I don't have a real big kitchen, right? And it's this weird mind game where I'm like, oh yeah, but then I have to wash the pasta machine. And I'm like, okay, it feels a lot less simple if I'm just like, no, wait, I can just let it dry, roll it up and cut it with a knife. Oh, then I'm all in. So gadgets can trip me up. Too much clutter in my kitchen, too much. And I think it comes down to I really don't like washing dishes.
Amen. We don't have a dishwasher. Like it is
I don't either.
Hands in the sink, and I am the same way. I'm like, how can I do this in less dishes? Like, how can I conserve?
So I was, before I went to the garden, I was working ahead for our Easter meal so that I can be present and don't have to be in the kitchen all day, right? And I was filming it for YouTube. So all my dishes are still in the kitchen sink. And do you want to hear the story that I told myself to allow myself to go in the garden before I wash the dishes? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I was gone last weekend. It's very important that I connect with the little boys. So I'm going to wait till they're home from school and then I will wash and they will dry and we'll just have a really good conversation. So I left all my dishes and I went to the garden and that was my excuse.
I think that's a valid and wonderful excuse. I love it. I'm going to use that on my almost 16-year-old daughter. Honey, we need some connection time. Let's go do dishes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I do think it's super interesting, though, to your point on the gadgets in the kitchen. And actually, it's kind of funny. I feel that way about the sewing machine. I learned when I was a little girl how to sew by hand. And I have found if I have a sewing project and I'm like, oh, but then I have to go and pull out the sewing machine because I don't have a sewing room.
Yeah.
And so I have to put the sewing machine, pull it out and set it up like on our dining room table. And anyhow, and so I'll find excuses to not sew because I don't want to pull the sewing machine out. But if it's something where I can just sit in the evening and like mend by hand or even quilt by hand, I will do that and I'll actually get it done. It might take me more nights, obviously, doing it by hand than it would with the sewing machine.
Yeah.
But it's like this mental thing. So I'm curious for you, are there any in the kitchen, are there any kitchen tools or appliances that you're like, okay, these ones I do consider essential and efficient, like they're worth it to have these gadgets?
Okay, so mostly I prefer non-electric gadgets, right? I don't know why. I do have a good blender, but I don't use it real often. I have a mixer, but I only use it for yeast doughs. Because otherwise I just find it so much simpler to just whisk, hold your bowl in one hand and whisk with a good stainless steel whisk. And then let me see, my butter churn is electric. I really like that one. If that one breaks, I would replace it immediately. My Bosch mixer, I don't know if I would replace it. Kind of like my dishwasher, because I learned to make bread without a Bosch mixer, without a dough hook or anything. So in the book, that launches this fall, my first book, I wrote a chapter on economical living. I think it's called The Art of Thriftiness or something. And in there, I wrote about when something breaks, do without for a while, because that teaches you if that item was complicating your life or if it's necessary. Like I already know instinctively my butter churn does not complicate my life. I love my electric butter churn. But like the dishwasher, that one, when it broke and Elvin was ready to go out and buy a new one, I'm like, let's hang on a bit because it's just let's take a good 6 months and the boys can all brush up on their dishwashing skills and let's revisit this in 6 months. and 6 months has come and gone 2 or 3 times already. Nobody has mentioned it. And I'm like, you know what? It did kind of complicate my life because my kitchen's tiny. And every time that door was open, nobody could walk. So that's usually what I say is when it breaks, especially if it's electric, do without for a while and see if it was simply complicating your life.
I like that. Okay, I've got to ask you though, by the hand part and the whipping, making meringue. Do you do that by hand?
I don't make meringue.
Okay. Because when this was back like when I was a newlywed, and I love like lemon meringue and chocolate meringue, or like I love meringue apparently. And so I didn't have at home when my mom made it, she had like a handheld electric mixer, like the little beaters where you put the little, and so she would always make it like that. Well, I decided that I was going to make it, and so I had the recipe, but I didn't have a kitchen. I didn't have a mixer. I didn't even have like a little handheld electric one, but I did have a bowl and a whisk. And so I'm like, well, back in the day they made meringue for centuries and did well. I don't know. I'm assuming they did anyway. So I'm like, surely you can do this by hand. Oh my Lanta. I think I whipped for like 15 minutes, like literally I would hand it to my husband because my arm was like numb, and I'm like, here, you whip it. And then he would I think I might have got it to the point of soft. It was by nowhere like an actual true meringue. I think I baked it anyways. I mean, like we ate it, but I was like,
I have another gadget. I have another gadget that I replace immediately when it breaks. And that's my immersion blender. I really, really love a good stick blender because it lives right, where I can reach it. It's 2 pieces and I have the rechargeable one. So I never have to mess with the cord. And it just gets me through so many shortcuts because I'm all about shortcuts. If I haven't mastered a good meringue, I would never make something that requires meringue. I'll just make like a lemon cream pie and put whipped cream on top of it instead. So I'm all about those shortcuts to get me out of the kitchen faster.
I love it. And I do love a good whipped cream, I had to say, but every now and then I just love that meringue. So, okay, well, I was like, because I was going to be in serious awe if you do meringue by hand. I'm like, tell me your secrets. Okay.
No, I don't do meringue by hand.
Okay. One of the things that I have really enjoyed in following your accounts is seeing when you guys do really large meals for big groups and that type of thing, because food is something that can bring people together. Or I feel like should bring people together. I feel like food is one of those things that should bring people together. It should be a connection spot. It should be a gathering, a deepening of relationships, and that type of thing. And so much of, I think, why I appreciate From Scratch, I don't know if you've found this to be true, but I have, is there's something about from scratch food that people sit and linger with. And you could argue that's like, well, you could do the same thing with store-bought and convenience, and you could. I just don't personally seeing it happening as much.
I think
I don't know why.
I think if I can use my younger children, for example, I can make the same meal with a different heart posture, right? So when I cook, like say tonight, I honestly, to be very honest, I don't love my kitchen. I don't love being in it. I love nutrition. That's what I love. So my goal is always to get in and out of the kitchen as fast as I can. But my family does not feel the love, right? And they start being, they just don't feel like I'm loving them when I just get in and out. So that's kind of where our Friday night family dinners were born from, was like, listen, guys, if you put up with me just slapping together some nutrition for you all the other nights of the week, I will make Friday nights special, and I'll put my all into it. And I won't do anything except make a meal for you. That'll be my whole Friday goal. And it's worked really well. Like they can all kind of hold out until Friday night. But then because Friday nights, I put my all into it and I make it special. I do things that I wouldn't normally do on a weeknight. They do linger. And they're all grateful. They can feel that I've made it special just for them. So I think cooking from scratch is kind of like a handmade quilt or a hand knitted sweater. You know that somebody put effort into it.
Yeah, it is amazing to watch it play out. I mean, guys, I've seen it time and time and time again. There's something about it that's really special. So to that point, I'm curious how your menu planning changes when you're doing a large gathering so that it's both delicious and manageable. Because I really loved earlier, you mentioned about Easter dinner specifically, that you're already prepping for that now so that you can be in the moment and enjoy it when the actual gathering is there. So I'd love to chat about that and what that practically looks like.
Okay, so for Easter dinner, what I made today, and I filmed it, is I made the dinner rolls and I made 2-layer cakes. And so here's what I did. I made the dinner rolls. I baked them completely. And as soon as they're room temperature, I will seal them and put them in the freezer, right? And I did the same with the cakes. I baked the cakes, made sure they're loose from their pans, wrapped them up and put them in the freezer. I made the frosting and put it in the refrigerator. So then on Friday, on Friday nights when we're serving our Easter meal, I will have a lot less work on Friday and a lot less dishes too, right? Because I'll just get the cakes out in the morning, defrost them. I'll get the dinner rolls out and I'll defrost them. And then I'll just stick the cakes together and put them in the fridge. And I'll do that, by lunchtime. And then they're off of my mind and I can focus on the pork loin and the potatoes that I want to make. So it's all about, in the Mennonite culture, when there's a wedding and there's 200 to 300 guests, the bride and her mother and her, sisters or whatever, they prepare all the food. And I promise you, they are not preparing it the day before the wedding, right? Because here's the other thing. The weddings happen in the bride's home. So they are like cleaning out furniture, setting up chairs. So the food, you learn from an early age what you can make ahead of time, what has to go in the freezer, what can go in the refrigerator and still taste just as good. And I think a lot of times what people think is that stuff that's in the freezer has been put there because it was stale or it was on its way out. So we better hurry up, freeze it. But they don't understand your things that you're buying at the grocery store. They are from the freezer. The trick is you have to put them in the freezer when they're fresh. You got to trap that freshness and nobody would ever know.
Yeah. And I have to say, frozen cakes frost so much easier than
and there's something about freezing baked goods that keeps them moist. I don't even know, but they're like, when I first started talking on social media about preparing ahead of time and freezing, like the Mennonites have this good mashed potato recipe that freezes for months. And people, like, I got so much hate because they're like, well, never eat. You know how it was. It was something that went viral. And then you have people that don't understand the context, don't understand my heart, and they're like, well, never eat at RuthAnn's house. Nothing's fresh there. And I'm like, oh, people just simply don't understand how to use the freezer, right? And these are probably the same people that are eating freezer pizzas.
Yeah.
So, but in the Mennonite cookbooks, in the back section, you'll often find cooking for a crowd.
Yeah.
Where they've scaled up the recipes. And like I have one recipe that is from my sister and from my mom, and it'll make cheese potatoes. You can make them, like a roaster full that serves 100 people. And, it says you need this many pounds of shredded hash browns, this many boxes of cheese, butter, and they just scale the recipes up.
Okay. Do you have like a formula or any like specific strategies for scaling up recipes for a large group like that?
Not
or like
really.
any like these types of recipes work well for scaling. Maybe that would be a better.
Yes. So I think most of the time when you're scaling up, like to feed a large crowd, you're either going to want soups or your ingredients separately. So cheese potatoes and a roaster full of baked beans and, burgers or something like that. But rarely when you're feeding like over 100 people is a casserole a good idea, because there's just no way, you're either going to bake, 10 9x13s.
Right.
Or because my go-to for feeding a large crowd of people is the big roasters, like the big turkey roasters.
Yeah.
And you don't want to mix multiple ingredients in those unless it's soup. Because even if you're doing lasagna, right? Let's say lasagna, which I love to make lasagna. But really, by the time you layer it all in a roaster, the edges are going to be burned before the center is done. You need something that you can stir. And you don't want to stir lasagna.
Those are really good tips. And this is so funny because my oldest son just turned 20, and I have a feeling within the next year or two, there will be a wedding. And so I'm already kind of planning ahead for large and to help a young couple keep costs down. I mean, obviously there's catering, but goodness, that gets so expensive. And so I'm already thinking ahead a little bit or a lot of
Yes.
for the wedding, what are some things that I can help them do to help, mitigate costs, to keep costs down and still be a lovely experience for all involved.
Save if you can for my daughter's weddings, we got the meat catered, because here was the thing. My husband really, really loves his smoker, and he really makes good food, good meat on there. And he's like, I'll just smoke briskets. And I'm just like, no, listen, on the day of the wedding, you cannot be smoking briskets. You're the father of the bride, right? I need you to be available and dressed. So you cannot smoke briskets. So we got the meat catered, but then everything else we made. So then we made cheese potatoes. Both my daughters wanted cheese potatoes at their wedding. And those you can make 2 to 3 days ahead of time and keep them in the cooler. And it's very, very simple. Now, share my recipe with you if you want, because it says this makes one roaster full. And if you're Mennonite or Amish at all, you know that one roaster feeds 80 to 100 people. That's part of
that.
Yeah,
I love it. Yes, yeah. I'm giggling because we have 2 smokers, and that is definitely my husband. But I'm also yes, that stress level. Honey, you can make an awesome smoke. It's not a question of the quality of your smoked meat, because it's great, but it's not something you can really do ahead of time. And yeah, that stress on that day. And I also love knowing exactly 80 people to a roaster. That is so helpful to know. That is approximately how many people that will feed.
Yes,
for the planning out part. Yeah.
And then green beans, we also did, so canned green beans. So we just, you heat them in the roaster. And then, so in the Amish and Mennonite communities, weddings work like this. So the bride and her family prepare everything ahead of time. But then on the day of the wedding, they have specific people that are invited just to take care and serve the food.
Okay.
So for my daughter's weddings, those were some of my friends, right? It would my friends that didn't really know the girls, but I know who to invite to take care of the food. So if you need me to come and make sure everything's ready and served, I can do that for you. So then at the venue, instead of having caterers, they're guests. They they get everything prepared. I of course met with them, but they have skills. They're Mennonite. They have all the same skills I have. And so they turn the roasters on and they go to the church and they, watch the ceremony. And then they're the first ones to leave, and they go and they just make sure everything is ready to serve.
That's awesome. So do you just keep those, that amount of roasters on hand as part of your kitchen, or
I have
is that
one
from the venue, or does everybody just kind of share?
Yeah, they'll share. Okay, so here's another thing. Personally, for our daughter's wedding, we borrowed the roasters from our church because our church has a kitchen, right?
Okay.
But here's a very interesting thing, and I think all communities should do this, but in the Amish and Mennonite communities, they have a trailer, an enclosed trailer, and guess what's inside that trailer? All the things that you could need to have a wedding.
Oh, how interesting. And it's just a community.
It's a community wagon. Well, you rent it. Somebody owns it.
Okay.
I think you pay, and it's full of folding chairs and tables and roasters and everything that you could need to have a wedding.
That is genius. Well, it's kind of funny. So we purchased almost 3 years ago now, 40 acres, just a half mile down the road from us, and it's a farm stay. So the farmhouse is an Airbnb, like a short-term vacation rental. And we really did it because I wanted the 40 acres to increase our beef herd, our cattle herd. And so I'm like, how can I make this mortgage pay for itself essentially, or just meet the mortgage payment, and get this pasture? And so we renovated the house, turned it into Airbnb, and then there was some extra barns on the property and a shop. And so I actually had people who started renting the Airbnb and asking, can we do a wedding there? And I'm like, yeah. And so I kind of started gathering things like, here's tables and chairs, and we use them for workshops and different things like that on the property already. I don't have roasters though. So I'm like, maybe I just need to add that to that. Obviously for that, but then for
roasters, and like big bowls, big, stainless steel mixing bowls or serving bowls. They also have a butchering wagon.
Ooh, fun.
I know. So, my husband works full time, right? So all of our animals that we raise, they go to a Mennonite butcher shop and we get them back in packages, right? And I really would love for our children to have the skills of butchering a large animal. We do chickens, and we do the deer, but I'd really like for them to have the skill. Well, Elvin grew up butchering their own beef, and so he's very cautious. He knows how much work it is, right? So he's always told me, you need thousands of dollars worth of equipment that you would use once or twice a year. It doesn't make sense. And he said, then I would have to take off of work to help. And it just doesn't make financial sense for us to do it. So when I told him, did you know you can rent a wagon that has all the things that you need to butcher a large animal? And he's like losing the argument. Slowly but surely, he's losing that argument.
Well, I'm excited because this year at the Modern Homesteading Conference this June, that is actually one of our demos. Is we have a butcher and he's showing here's a beef. Day one on Friday morning is breakdown of that. And then day two is sausage making. And, and so my husband is we're going to be taking a peek at that. But
I think Elvin's coming with me. Did I tell you that we have 3 cows due to calve that week?
Oh, it's always calving season for us in June too. Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm hoping Elvin can come with me because I will send him to that. So another thing, talking about weddings, and so we got the brisket catered for my daughter's wedding. And homesteading has taken such a deep root in my heart now that I almost had to go like this, because I know, because you consume the whole animal, right? Because you put all this time and effort into it. But to serve brisket to 200 people, do you know how many cows that took? So I'm just like, I'm kind of, like this.
You're kind of like, pretend, like, look
because I'm just like, I just know how much effort went into those cows, but it's okay. It was for a wedding, but I, like 10 years ago, I would have never even thought about that. But when you get into the routine of consuming the whole animal, you realize that there's some cuts of meat that are for special occasions only, because there's only 2, until next summer.
Yeah. Honestly, this is going to sound probably funny, but for us, that's the oxtail.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, oxtail soup is considered like, if you come over and you get served oxtail soup at my house, like, no, you are special. Well, you're special regardless, but
right.
Really special.
That's for us. And bacon, like the boys, they know that bacon, it's when it's gone until the next time we take hogs to the butcher.
Yeah. Oh, you're good. I have to confess, there's only so much bacon on a pig. And when we run out, I'll go so long, but then if it's too long, there's a couple local farms where I'm like, okay, I'm going to place the bacon order only. Yeah.
Well, we've gotten so used to, the Mangalitsa cross, is what we raise. And their bacon is so soft that we don't really like any other bacon now.
Oh, what are you crossing it with? I'm curious.
So our boar is Mangalitsa, and they're like a lard pig, right?
Yeah,
so,
they're the curly.
Yes, and their lard is a lot different than like your modern day breeds, which I don't even know what they are. It's much softer. Even at room temperature, it almost runs to a puddle. Anyway, so then our female, we usually just use a Berkshire Yorkshire cross for our
Okay.
female or something like that.
Yeah.
And so
how
that's what
old,
we're raising.
what age then is the cross? Like, at what age are you butchering is what I'm trying to
Okay,
ask.
so we were experimenting like the last 4 or
Yeah.
5 years, trying to see what works. And so they were about a year until they were ready. But we've
Okay.
now decided, because we harvested some younger. And then Elvin's like, this is crazy to feed 4 pigs all winter long. It just gets too expensive.
Yeah.
So what we're going forward, our plan is to just farrow as early as we can in the spring.
Uh-huh.
And harvest them like in November before the winter really sets in.
Okay.
Because we still have all the, garden goodies and things like that. And yes, they won't be as big, but that's okay. We just keep an extra 1 or 2 then, and we'll still end up with the same amount of meat in the freezer.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I was asking because we've done Hereford. We've done Hereford, and then we had the year of COVID and didn't realize that our farmer had retired when we were breeding, because we weren't breeding ourselves. And so then of course everybody at that point in time was looking for piglets and everything, and we were like, so the only thing that we could get at that point was American guinea hog. So that was my first time raising a lard pig. And they were pure, so it was straight American guinea hog, and the lard was awesome. Best bacon I've ever had in my life, I have to say. So I'm assuming very similar probably to what you're describing with the Mangalisa. But our yield, because we also only raised until about 8 months because we weren't set up for winter. We didn't have a barn. And with the Hereford, we would butcher in October, and it was never a thing. So I don't know that I don't believe I would ever do a straight, pure American guinea hog again. So that's why I was asking about the hybrid though, because that I would be very tempted to try. But that was the thing we were running into, like with American guinea hog, technically a lot of times they need to be about 18 months. And I'm like, by the time we feed them that long, like it just wasn't making financial sense.
Exactly. That's exactly the point we got to, is even when we crossed them, they weren't finishing out until about 12 months, which meant we had to feed them for a winter. And every time that feed truck pulled in, I'm like, nope, I got to rethink this. So we decided to just raise more so that our yield is the same for the family. Because Elvin says that after a certain weight, and I don't remember, you're not, they're mature, but they're not fat, right? Mm-hmm. But because we're crossing them with a Mangalitsa, we're already getting a lot of fat. So we're just going to raise, instead of raising 3 for the family, we're probably going to raise 4 or 5 and see how that works. Because all summer long, we'll feed, we can feed them very economically. And then during the winter, all we have to feed is our breeding pair. And they, like adult pigs, all they need is maintenance through the winter. So that'll hopefully be a lot cheaper than trying to keep them over winter.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I know it was a little off topic, but
yeah, we got off topic.
Wait a minute.
You can take that all out if you need to.
No. I think no, definitely we'll leave it in though, because that's kind of the, like where we kind of got with, like, I love heritage breeds and I do like a lot of lard, but I also have to make it work for the economics. Like, you have to make it all work together. And so it's really fun to get to talk to somebody else, because I don't have a lot of folks who are raising animals in that homestead, home economic. It's different when you're doing commercial. I mean, obviously, but like, so
because I always say our goal is nutrition, not profit, right? And so our goal is just nutrition, not profit, but so we're not making money, but we also don't want our nutrition to cost us so much. Like I would rather put in time and energy than feed. So if I'm going to start exploring this, is to grow some vegetables just to feed our breeding pair of hogs through the winter, to help with that. Like Sean and Beth Doetry, you know who I'm talking about? Yes. So they are a great influence in this area. And I have to let go of my ideal of when I'm growing something, it should look beautiful like this. Because she was telling me, you can take the Tromboncino squash and the Mangawurzels and just sow them in a backfield somewhere and then go dig them out. and store them, and that'll feed your breeding pair all winter. And I'm like, yeah. And then somebody at one of the Homestead conferences gave me these really old-fashioned corn seeds. And she said, oh, no, you just grow these for the animals. You just sow them somewhere in a back corner and let them grow. And they're perfect to feed your animals. And I'm like, oh, like there's a whole new world out there.
I had looked at, I'm trying to think, it's a really big beet.
Yes, it's probably kind of like the manga wurzel.
Yeah, it's similar to that. And then there was this, it was a Homestead heirloom variety of winter squash that is supposed to produce like 10 pounds per squash. I only got one little trial size package because I'm like, I just kind of want to play with this.
Yeah.
I don't know if I just got a bad batch or I don't know. They didn't grow for me. Like all my other winter squash, like I'm like, I know how to grow winter squash. We've grown winter squash for 25 years in heirloom. So that one I didn't have success with, but I want to continue to explore that, to your point.
Probably by the time I was telling Alvin the other day, probably by the time I get this perfected, I will be too old to execute it. Like
that's
this
okay. We can pass it along.
Like this growing feed for my animals. Then he said, no, look at it this way. By the time you perfect it, you won't need as many animals because your family will be, it'll just be you and I. So you don't have to grow so many. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
I know. That feels so foreign to me. Even though my son is now out of the house because he's 20, I just realized that now. I'm like, as I have started the tomatoes and the peppers, most everything else I direct sow, but I start those with our shorter summers. And I'm like, I am still growing everything like I have a teenage boy eating at home, and I don't. And I'm like, I may need to sell some of these as seedlings because.
Well, here's another thought for you. And I did this when the babies were little and I was lacking in time and energy, right? So one year, you grow a whole lot of corn, and then that's enough for 2 years. So then next year you can put green beans in there. And then you have a whole lot of green beans, then you don't need as many the next year. So I still kind of do that with corn. Like this year, I don't need any more corn in my freezer. So I'll just grow enough for fresh eating. And I'll use that space to experiment with other things.
I like that.
So if you have extra tomatoes and tomatoes and peppers this year, they'll just keep. I mean, it doesn't hurt to keep them 2 years, right? Or even more. Yeah. And then next year, you'll have that space in the garden to try something new or different.
Yeah, I like that. Well, maybe I'll roll with that. I'm hoping it's a fabulous pepper year. I kind of actually did that 2 years ago. We had an extra warm summer. And so the peppers were just like, they were very happy and quite prolific, like best yield ever. Last year wasn't quite the same. And so I just ran out of peppers that I had freeze dried. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, that's okay if I get extra. I'm hoping it's a good pepper year.
I have to be very intentional about remembering where to plant my peppers, because I always plant them at the same time I do my tomatoes. So they always go next to the tomatoes. And then the tomatoes get so huge and the peppers don't get enough of heat because they're in the shade of the tomatoes. So I have to intentionally tell myself, RuthAnn, the peppers can go away from the tomatoes. Put them far away out by themselves where they get hot.
Yes. Wise plan. I like it.
Yes.
Well, this has been so much fun. I can't wait to get to see you this year at conference and in person. Goodness, we could talk for a really long time. I have a feeling.
I know.
But I so appreciate you coming on and all of the sharing that you do. I thoroughly enjoy. So for folks who would love to, well, one, we both hope that you come to the Modern Homesteading Conference, because we would both love to see you in person this year.
Yes, I will be there. I have yet to find a place to stay and book my flights, but that's okay.
We have you for rooms. So you don't have to worry about that part.
Okay. Yes. But I do need everybody that knows I'm coming to cover it with prayer, because 3 cows due in 1 week, and they're milk cows. So somebody, and the one is a heifer. So I can't leave her with the kids and a first time heifer. So I'm just very prayerful. I either hope she goes 2 weeks early or 2 weeks late.
Or she holds. Okay.
She holds. Yes.
We will cover that. And RuthAnn, where's the best spot for folks to connect with you online until conference?
Okay, so I am on Instagram every day. I never have a plan. I just take people along with whatever I'm doing that day. YouTube is twice a week. So YouTube at RuthAnn Zim, Instagram at RuthAnn Zim. And then I send out a weekly email. And yes, I've got a book coming out in September with Harvest House called The Heart of the Homestead. And then a book next year, which is a cookbook.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and all your sharing. I especially love the kittens when you're milking in the morning. Those are some of my favorites.
Yes.
I love watching those. That's so much fun. So thank you so much for coming on. And we'll have links for your Instagram and YouTube and website and all those fun things in the show notes and on the blog post that accompanies this episode. And I can't wait to see you in a few months.
Thank you, Melissa.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that as much as I did. RuthAnn was such a joy. I can't wait to see her in person. I hope that you are able to come to the Modern Homesteading Conference and join us. And also, my book, Home and Handmade, releases May 6th. It's available for pre-order right now. One of the reasons you want to do pre-order is when you pre-order the book, especially from places like Amazon, is if they drop the book lower than the price that you paid when it's still on pre-order. So before launch day, before May 6th, they will charge you the lowest price the book drops to. And the more people that order it, the lower that Amazon will then begin to drop the price, because once they see that there's large demand for something, then typically they will start to drop that price down. So if you have not pre-ordered your copy yet of Home and Handmade, a lot of the recipes and things that we talked about today, you will find in here, from making your own homemade, truly fermented yogurt, as well as all of my variations of making your own roux for those cream of condensed soup replacements. It has over 100 recipes and 20 brand new recipes. This is a revised and updated version from when I originally wrote this back in 2016. So all of the things you loved, and then packed with even more. We've added additional chapters, brand new recipes, and if you pre-ordered it, make sure that you go to melissaknorris.com/handmade, and you'll see it on the book tab and the link beneath this episode, because there's a pre-order bonus form. You'll just put your name, email, and your receipt number from where you pre-ordered the book, and you are going to get amazing bonuses. I have done for you step-by-step tutorials from fermenting, sourdough, making tinctures, and making homemade donuts. And you guys, the coupon codes that the companies have put for pre-order bonuses and partnered with are phenomenal. There is a rare as your standard coupon code that is available. It expires May 6th. So you want to jump in there now and get your pre-order bonuses, but it is for current customers. That is very rare that they do that. We have a fabulous coupon code from Redmond Real Salt. That is the only salt that I use in our house, from cooking, baking, canning, fermenting, you name it. We use Redmond Real Salt. It is a fabulous salt. And we've got some really amazing bonus coupons and a free ebook from one of my favorite herbalists, Dr. Patrick Jones. And you have heard him if you've listened to the podcast. He's been on a few times. He will also be at the Modern Homesteading Conference. So make sure that you snag your copy of Home and Handmade and get your hands on all of those amazing bonuses and an asset for you to cook from scratch and learn those foundational cooking skills. And plus, I don't know about you, but I always love to get a cookbook that I know has from scratch cooking in it. Going through cookbooks is one of my favorite things. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. I look forward to being back here with you next week. Blessings and mason jars for now, my friends.